There are parts about everybody's job that they don't like, and I have them too. But there are also parts about people's jobs that they love, and I have those as well. And in this video, I'm going to jump into all those different pieces. I'm going to talk about the three things that I love about being a wildlife guide and the three things that I find challenging to be a wildlife guide. And some of these things have made me question whether or not I want to do this for a career. How long can I last in this industry? How long can I live in this town? And other parts reinforce every single piece of joy and curiosity and fascination that I have with being in the career that I have chosen. If you're new to the channel, my name is Bo Weldon. I am a passionate and professional wildlife guide based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And while most of my content is me outside, as the name would suggest, Bo knows outside, this time it's cold outside. It's in the negatives today here in Jackson Hole. And I wanted to just come to you live, not live, live? Come to you from my apartment. My dog, Wolfgang, is sleeping behind us. Okay, let's jump into it. Okay, let's start with the bad news first. The three things that I don't necessarily love or enjoy about being a wildlife guide. Number one, the scheduling. Now, my job on an annual basis is amazing. Almost like a teacher, I have big chunks of time where I don't work, and I get time off to travel with my beautiful and lovely wife. I get to hunt. That's going to be a surprise to a lot of folks if they've never looked at my content, or even if you have. I'm going to do another video about how hunting has really changed my relationship with wildlife, and I would argue in a positive way. Um, but the scheduling can be challenging. And so here's what I mean. So typically guides for our company, Jackson Hole Eco Tour Adventures, we work 4 days a week. And those 4 days, say it's a Monday through Thursday schedule. Obviously, some guides work, say, a Friday through Monday schedule. But let's say for this example, it's a Monday through Thursday schedule. From week to week, my day one, my Monday, could be a sunrise trip. That's 4 hours long. And in the summertime, I'm usually wrapped up home before noon. Okay, that's a pretty nice work day. You get up early, but you get to end early. My day two, my Tuesday, could be a Yellowstone. So that's a 10 to 12 hour trip scheduled for guests. That means it's like a 13 to sometimes even like 15 hours for me as a guide. That's a long time. That's a big day. Day three could be a full day. So that's an 8 hour trip. So 10-ish hours as a guide, getting there about an hour ahead of time, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit longer to clean at the end. And then my last day could be a sunrise. That's a great week. That's good money to be made. But what's challenging about the scheduling is that can change from week to week. So say it's the next week, I could go to Yellowstone on Monday, and then I could have 3 sunrise trips in a row. So then I'm done by noon, 3 days, which gives me time to hang out with my dog, gives me time to go to the grocery store and do laundry and run and go for a hike and have some good mental health, work-life balance. But the challenge is scheduling that from week to week can be a trick, especially if you are doing this long enough where you build a family and you get married and you have other goals in life. That can be challenging. Plus, the winter is really a different animal here, where most folks who book trips in the summer, it's January right now. I'm already booking trips for the summer, where in the wintertime, I think the average is like 6 days ahead of time, where someone goes from, what should we do while we're here in Jackson Hole? Let's find something else to do that's besides skiing. And that is challenging if you are working in this field and you don't know if you're going to work, because those people who are going to book the trip, they don't even know that they're going to book the trip yet. So that day-to-day challenging can be day-to-day scheduling can be challenging as a wildlife guide. Okay, number two, and I can't complain too much about this one because it is just a factor of working in the tourism industry, but that is living off of tips. Now, gratuity is an interesting thing in an American society, and there's lots that you can diagnose in, is it American, is it anti-American, and look at the history of what it means to tip in this country. But I digress. The thing that's tricky to live off of tips is that you can have what I would argue to be a very amazing day. in that we see kind of the laundry list of species. So say in the summer months we see a grizzly bear, a black bear. Get really lucky in the summer. We see a wolf down here in the Tetons. We have bison and moose and pronghorn and elk, and we see, and a badger, maybe toss it in there, and an eagle, and we see like all the things that most people want to see in a summertime experience. You could get a $0 tip. Whoever your guests are, whatever their expectations are, their knowledge coming into it, whether or not they are tippers just in general in life and how they navigate the world, and arguably if they've worked in the service industry before. You could have another type of experience out here where you see maybe a black bear, you'll see maybe a moose and some elk and some deer, maybe you throw that eagle back in there, but you don't get the grizzly bear and the wolf, just based on the chaos and the entropy and the randomness of being out here. And you could get a fabulous tip. And that is challenging to live off of that kind of fluctuating income. Again, I can't complain too much about this, but it is challenging to live off of this type of cash flow, because typically where you have guides, whether that be a mountain guide, whether that be a wildlife guide, a river rafting guide, whatever it is, most of these areas, especially now, are rural, remote, and expensive. And those three things, right, kind of circulate around each other, because the ruralness, the remoteness is what leads to the beauty, what leads to the experience that you can't get arguably anywhere else nearby, or right, or you're coming to this destination to achieve that thing that you don't have back home. But it also means that the places like Jackson Hole is really expensive to live here, and so that fluctuating cash flow is just a challenge. It's hard to go from day to day saying, okay, I'm going to get a base rate that I get paid from my company, and I could either double that today or I could stay right there. And if you have life goals and traveling and car insurance and monthly payments, that can be hard. Number 3 of the things that are challenging to be a wildlife guide, and those are stinker guests. Now, most of the folks that come on these trips, they are excited, they are enthusiastic, they are ready to get out here and see these things. But occasionally, from time to time, you're going to get some stinkers. People are people, and you can't get away from that even in the wildlife world. Even if you're showing them something unbelievable, something that as a guide, based on the number of hours that you've been out there, you don't see that often. So a quick anecdote, 3-4 winters ago, I was out here with some guests, and they just didn't seem too enthusiastic about kind of the day. We're about an hour into a 4-hour trip, and all of a sudden I see movement out of the left side of the vehicle. We're on a river corridor, and it's wolves. And it's also a cow elk, a female elk, running quite literally for her life. And they take her down while we're kind of slow rolling around the river. And we hop out of the car, we set up our scopes. We are watching something pretty graphic, to be sure. And I check in with my guests whenever that happens, of like, we can come back later once the actual death part is done, so that can be a little bit of a separation. They said they wanted to watch. I was like, fantastic. I find a lot of interest in that. Yes, it is powerful and intense, but I want to watch. And we were out of the car for probably a minute. And then they said, okay, it's time to go. As they're saying that, other wolves from the pack are catching up. It's like the river and the Tetons, and it's winter. It's so beautiful. And they said, we want to go. I almost gave them the keys to the car and just said, you can just leave me here. I'm good. I'm good right here for now. And we proceeded to go into Jackson Hole, and they proceeded to shop at several home goods stores. These folks had not arranged for a rental car, and so they said, hey, this is great. We'll go look for critters with this wildlife thing for an hour, and then this person has a car, so they will take us around town. Customer's always right. So that's what I did. I left that scenario. And that's probably the biggest, the worst stinker guess I've ever had. Sure, people haven't been, they aren't great listeners. They don't listen to my explanations when they ask a question. They have certain whatever political views on wildlife and land management agencies and the federal government and all these other things. Again, people are people. There's going to be friction. But sometimes it's hard to work with those stinker guests. And it kind of goes back to a little bit of living off of tips and wanting to present the company really well. Is sometimes it's hard to be enthusiastic about the thing you are trying to sell to these people, the experience you are working really hard to sell to them, to get them engaged, to dig out their own curiosities, and they just don't care at all. And apathy is fine if you're just a little bit like, that's kind of neat, but whatever. But just like the active uh, lack of curiosity, you're just like, I don't even care about whatever we see. That's hard to do. That's hard to do as somebody who comes from a world who's so passionate and so curious by it all. Okay, let's move on to some of the things that I actually like about my job. Here we go. So number one, the first thing that I love most about being a wildlife guide is it's wildlife, right? It's the wildlife. This place, the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, is insane. And I know some people will come to particularly Yellowstone and they'll say, as a national park, visually, meh. It's big, it's mountainous. I get the geysers, I get that, but say maybe compared to like the sassiness of the Tetons or the grandeur of Glacier or just like the inspiring nature of Yosemite, sure, maybe like on the front, Yellowstone isn't the most like overly dramatically beautiful place. I can get that. But gosh, the wildlife, this ecosystem is just so incredible. We had to do some work on the wolves, right? We had to bring them back. But pretty much every species that has existed here still exists here right now. And there are very few places in the lower 48 where you can say that still, without having like big species not in the mix anymore. And so to be able to guide people to see these things and share this with other people, it's amazing. And the interactions between all the wildlife and individuals that you get to know over the years, whether it be famous grizzly bears or famous moose or famous wolves or whatever. And then even all the animals that you have no idea who they are. And you still get to see them and you don't know their story. But it's okay that you don't know their story because it's theirs. And we're just stardust, right? We're just this little blip that we get to see part of their world. So the wildlife, yeah, that's an amazing part about being a wildlife guide. Big surprise. Number two, the thing that I also really enjoy about being a wildlife guide, and if you've been on a trip with me, probably heard me talk about this, but it's the connection to people. So ahead of my trips, if I don't know who my guests are, if they are new guests to me, all I know about you is your phone number and your name. And if I'm really curious, I can look up your area code and say, hey, you're from Pittsburgh. Hey, you're from LA. Hey, you're from Chicago, New York, wherever. Great. I can get that little piece of information and maybe start to think about what you as a guest are going to enjoy or have seen, whatever. But the thing that I think is so amazing is that even if we have our phones and we can ostensibly talk to anybody, anywhere, at any given moment, that my job is the original form of communication for our species. For tens of thousands of years, the human species has been telling oral history above YouTube, above Instagram, above the internet of any kind. And I rather love that I get to be in that art form still. That I pick people up in a funny corner of Western Wyoming and show them around and make a connection. And some of my guests I would lay down in traffic for. I have been working with them for years. They have been very kind to me. They've been very generous to me, either financially or with their stories and their passion for these places. And I think that that is an amazing thing. And I think that is what keeps me in this job as well, is the idea that I can connect with people, they can share stories, we can make stories together, and that is what our species is good at, and that is what our species hopefully will continue to be good at. It's the people. Okay, so before I jump into the last thing, I have an ask of you, please, which is if you would subscribe and like this video and maybe write a comment or two. Again, I'm told by the YouTube gurus that that really makes a difference. Okay, let's get on to that last thing of what I really enjoy about my job. Number three, the third thing that I really enjoy about my job, it's outside time. I grew up very privileged in Colorado and had a mother and a father who were very focused on making sure that I spent a lot of time outside and developed a connection to the natural world. And that is why I do what I do right now and that I am not in an office. Being able to spend more of my days outside in the natural world, noticing and observing and being that naturalist to the best that I can because I am in a tourism field. And so I would argue that the naturalist pace of exploring the outside is very hard to do on a commercial scale. Um, and so while I'm not going as slow as maybe sometimes I would like, being able to be outside, breathing that fresh air, sun on the skin, all those things, that's incredible. And that really does make me happy. It really, really does. So having access to that in a way that financially supports me is remarkable. It really, truly is. And I feel thankful for it. Okay, team. That's it. Those are the three things that I love about my job. And those are the three things that I don't necessarily love about my job. And I know that we all have those things. And I'm sure there are probably going to be some people on there who are like, oh, why are you complaining at all? You are outside looking at grizzly bears and wolves and these things that, yeah, people spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get here just to see that one time. I get it. And I think that there's a duality in our world that we can have both beauty and amazement in our lives, and we can also carry frustrations, regardless of what we are doing. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'm trying to do more of this long form content. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. Send this video to somebody else. And if you have any questions about being a wildlife guide, shoot them in the comments down below. Or send me a direct message on Instagram. I'd love to chat if you're interested in joining this field, and we can dive deeper into these things. As always, if you want to go on a tour with me, you can contact the organization, Jackson Hole Eco Tour Adventures, and just say, hey, I've been chatting with Bo, and I want him to be my guide. Yes, believe it or not, I get days off. And sometimes that overlaps with when you're here. And I'm sorry about that. But I will do my absolute best to make sure that I can be your guide so that we can have a connection. Because if you remember, that's the number 2 reason why I love my job so much. Okay, team, that's it. We love you. Stay golden. Bye for now.